my dudes, how you doing? I hope you're having a goddamn great day. Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be looking to implement Thomas Tuchel's tactics into FC24 for Manchester United. He has been rumored to possibly be the man to take over from Erik ten Hag, so let's find out how he may look to try and set out his side going forward. Starting off with the formation now, I have selected the 4-2-3-1 wide, and I have made one change to it. I've widened the two centre backs to allow them to split for when you are looking to build out from back to front. But otherwise, I've made no other changes whatsoever. So therefore, it would be one goalkeeper, two centre backs, two fullbacks, two DMs, one attacking midfielder, two wider midfielders, and then of course, one striker. Okay, my dude, so taking a look at the tactics. Now, starting off with tactical vision, I've selected wing play. We've seen countless times in the past, Thomas Tuchel's sides, they do require bombing on fullbacks. We've seen currently with Bayern Munich, we saw with Borussia Dortmund, PSG, even with Chelsea, the likes of a Reece James, a Ben Chilwell, the likes of a Conrad Lima or a Mazraoui, or even a Kimmich and an Alphonso Davies down the left-hand side, or even a Guerrero. So we have seen that Thomas Tuchel, it's a key element to his side. He doesn't overly like committing too many players in those wider areas. He likes it more, channeled centrally, but the fullbacks need to try and create that width down either flank. So you will expect that to happen. You want your fullbacks bombing down the touchdowns, being very involved in the attacking outlet, providing quite a bit of space for your striker, your attacking midfielder, even your midfielders to try and, work with and work into. So for the defense and the defensive style, I've set this to pressure on heavy touch. Now, more so, again, if you take a look at Thomas Tuchel's previous sides, they do press and they do probe, but they are more concerned with making sure that structurally they are sound. They look to try and regain their shape, regain their structure, making it very hard for the opposition to try and exploit them. And once they have that shape and structure, yes, the forwards look to press and probe, and the fullbacks will also look to aggressively press the opposition. And that can lead to, forced turnovers, forced errors, and mistakes happening at the back. And when that does occur, you can allow for your side to turn the ball over and counter-attack very swiftly, very quickly, and look to put the ball in the back of the net. As for the team width, I've set this to 70. It will allow you to have a nice widespread team, preventing those crosses being fired into the box. Of course, you can slightly be exposed more centrally at times, but pair that up with the certain player instructions, the individual instructions, it can work out very, very well. Now, taking a look at the depth, I've set this to 85. It can allow for your entire team to be pushed nice and high up the field. It helps with the possession-based brand of football that Tuchel will be looking to play at Old Trafford. And essentially, it will also reduce the amount of space between the lines that your opposition can't really exploit. Now, moving on to when you do have possession of the ball and you're looking to try and dictate the pace of play. For the build-up play going forward, I've set this to balance. Now, essentially, we have seen Thomas Tuchel, he will allow his side to adjust and adapt to the opposition when in possession of the ball. So if the opposition are pressing you nice and high up the field, your team can choose to go long, look to go more direct, look to get those runners in behind, looking to try and find the space that the opposition are obviously leaving in behind them. At the same time, if the opposition are looking to sit further back, have a bit more of a deeper block in play, you can look to build the ball up more slowly, more effectively, try and, wait and press and probe, wait for those opportunities to, be created, and then look to try and exploit them. You can also look to transition very effectively from back to front with the fast build-up. And I do think that the balanced approach allows a Thomas Tuchel side to do this. At the same time, it will also allow your team to maintain its structure. So if you do turn the ball over, your team doesn't have to consistently shrink and try and, get back into shape, and you're already going to be more or less in the same shape. As for the transcreation, I've set this to possession. I have said that if you look at any Thomas Tuchel side, it's always based around possession, trying to maintain the ball, wait for the opportunities to create for themselves, and looking to exploit those opportunities when you can. At the same time, you will be looking to try and interchange quite a few shorter passes, looking to try and pull players out of position. And one key tactic that I can say you should use for a possession-based brand of football, I recently discovered this as well. If you double tap R1, and obviously you're pointing the analog stick in the direction of the player, it will naturally tell that player to come a bit shorter, and that way you can look to interchange passes. Also, when you do that, depending on what the opposition are set out to do, that may, pull another, opposition player out of position, opening up a bit of space. So it's quite a useful tactic and, set of controls that you can look to use in order to replicate a very good possession-based brand of football. So taking a look at the team's width on the offensive end of things. Now, I have said this, but Thomas Tuchel likes his team to try and channel their attacking outlets more centrally at times. The wingers need to try and attack the space between the fullback as well as the centre-back, looking to try and operate in those half spaces, pulling players out of position, but at the same time, with such a nice, compact, cohesive unit, it allows you to interchange 5-yard passes, those shorter passes that we spoke about for the possession-based brand of football, very nicely as well as very effectively. At the same time, because paired up with player instructions, because your team's more, focused on those central areas, it does open up quite a bit of the wider channels for the fullbacks to try and operate in and, facilitate crosses and cutbacks, and looking for your team to try and exploit the opposition with. As for the players in the box, I've set this to 7, allowing for 3 to 4 players to be in and around that attacking third at all times. It can be either one of your wingers paired up with your striker and your number 10, and of course the addition of an on-running, deeper midfielder, maybe a Scott McTominay. And then finally, the corners and the free kicks, as always, is still set to 4. So guys, taking a look at the individual player instructions, starting off at the back with Andre Onana. He is set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. Now, essentially, Onana is very good at claiming those aerial balls when they are fizzed into the box, and it is a key element to the likes of a Thomas Tuchel side. He needs his keeper to be very ready and engaged with the opposition when, those crosses or those danger balls are, played into the box. As for the ability to be a sweeper keeper, now essentially Onana is a very good sweeper keeper, but it's never been a key element to what Thomas Tuchel expects from him, or from the goalkeeper. We've seen with the likes of a Benjamin Mendy, he was more so a traditional base goalkeeper that would look to try and stay on his line. But when you are playing such a hard line, you would expect and require your goalkeeper to be very proactive and ready for anything that might occur higher up the field, whether it's a counter-attack or a quick through ball played. You don't have a lot of recovery pace, so you also need to be wary of that, especially in your back line. But with the likes of the sweeper keeper role being set to on, it can allow you to try and reduce the possible attacking outlets from the opposition. As for your 2 centre-backs, now both Maguire and Martinez, they will probably be here next season, so if the likes of Tuchel does take over, this could possibly be the centre-back pairing that he chooses to go with, unless we have made a few signings and those players maybe might fit the system a bit better. And I'm mainly speaking about the right-hand side. But for the likes of a Maguire as well as a Martinez, they are both set to the base set of instructions. Moving on now to your fullbacks, of course. The likes of a Luke Shaw and a Diego Dalot, I think they would fit a Thomas Tuchel system very, very well. Both are very good attack-minded fullbacks that can, get forward as well as, sit further back if required, if needed, and look to try and soak up pressure in certain situations. But in order to replicate that bombing on, attacking outlets down either flank, Luke Shaw will be set to join the attack, overlap, as well as stick to position. Just like with the likes of Diego Dalot. Same role and instructions as well. So guys, taking a look at your double pivot of McTominay and Mainu. Now, essentially the reason I have picked McTominay over a Casemiro or an Amrabat is because I do think that those two players will not be at Manchester United next season, whether it's Ten Hag or, a Thomas Tuchel coming in. I think that Tuchel does like McTominay. He tried to sign him for Bayern Munich, so he will be used in this system very effectively. So, taking a look at his defensive behavior, it will be set to cut passing lanes. Both him and Mainu will have the same role, a very good zonal approach to trying to break up the opposition's build-up play. As for the attacking support, you want McTominay getting nice and high up the field, almost breaking into the box at times, playing as a secondary striker. And I think this season, the likes of an Erik Ten Hag has identified that that is the best role for McTominay going forward. So I do think that Thomas Tuchel will use him in a very similar way. As for the interceptions, it will be set to normal, as well as the positioning freedom will be set to stick to position. You don't want him dropping deep or playing as a deep lying playmaker, or even drifting out wide. More so, stay central and, run your central areas as best as you possibly can. And then finally, the defensive positioning is set to cover the center. Now, essentially, because you have split and, widened the center backs, there is quite a bit of space between them that can be exploited. So you want your 2 DMs to try and cover that space as best as possible. And if required, if needed, if the fullbacks are being overrun in those wider areas, you can look to manually drag your McTominay or your Mainu into that left or right channel to try and pick up the extra man in those wider spaces. As you'll see here for the likes of a Mainu, slightly differing role, he will be set to cut the passing lanes as well. But for the attacking support, very much modeled after what a Kimmich has done in the past for Bayern Munich, as well as a Julian Weigl for Borussia Dortmund back in the day. Very much looking to run the game, dictate the pace of play. So he'll be looking to stay further back, looking to try and shield the backline as best as possible, although that is not really what Mainu is all about. It's more so to try and have him being that deep-lying playmaker, allowing him to collect the ball from the goalkeeper restarts, progress it further forward, and almost be press resistant at times, because that is essentially what Mainu is. He is so good at just being able to, throw in a body feint, throw the opposition off, and then go the other way and pass it off. And he's incredible at doing so. You want to try and start in that central area for, the ability to almost play as a back three, especially when the fullbacks do bomb further forward. And essentially, I do think that this will be the role for Mainu going forward if the likes of a Thomas Tuchel does come in. And then, of course, just like with McTominay, he'll also be set to cover the center. Further forward now into the likes of a Bruno Fernandes. Essentially, I'm not really modeling him off of anybody. I think that Bruno Fernandes will be a bit of an enigma compared to the previous number 10s that Tuchel has used. A Mason Mount, a Jamal Musiala. Even Musiala has been used very differently to how, previous 10s have been used under Tuchel. So I think Bruno will have a very different role. And I do think that he will be told to come back on defense. He'll obviously look to have that work rate throughout the entirety of the field, whether it's, on the offensive end or when out of possession of the ball. He does tend to do this, whether it's an Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, a Rolf Rangnick, and of course an Erik ten Hag. So he will be, allowed to come back, drop a bit deeper, support the likes of a Mainu as well as a McTominay. And essentially with McTominay breaking forward as much as he possibly will, it can allow them to interchange positions, which is also quite nice, allowing for Bruno to take up a bit more of a deeper role at times and allowing McTominay to operate higher up the field. The support on crosses will be set to balance, and that allows them to break into the box every now and then, or stay on the edge of the box and look to try and facilitate and create. Pair that up with the likes of a Mason Mount. You want to try and, create as much as you possibly can for the likes of a Marcus Rashford, for the likes of a Rasmus Højlund, and maybe even for the likes of a Scott McTominay. The positioning freedom will be set to free roam, allowing him to drift all over the place, pulling players out of position. And it works quite well with a possession-based brand of football that you will be looking to play, because he will consistently look to show for the ball, operates in spaces that he is available for a pass. Pair that up with Mason Mount's instructions, it can allow for quite a bit of interchangeability between the two. As for the interceptions, it will be set to aggressive, again looking to try and implement that Bruno Fernandes aggressive high work rate. Speaking of Mason Mount, he'll also be told to come back on defense, always looking to track back, always looking to try and, help out the fullback where he possibly can. And we have seen countless times this season, even though he has not played on the wing for United, he's always had that aggressive work rate where he can, push nice and half the field when in possession, but he'll also look to track back and pick up the runners and make sure that his man is well marked at all times. As for the chance creation with the support runs that are set to come short and free run, this will more or less force Mount inside, allowing him to play almost as a secondary number 10, again allowing him to be that secondary playmaker paired up with Bruno Fernandes, always looking to try and supply the likes of a Rasmus Højlund and a Marcus Rashford with, of course, the attacking outlet for them to try and score the goals. So you want more or less Mason Mount in this position to try and, have a very similar role. And we saw at Chelsea when Tuchel was there, when deployed as that, right wing / right midfielder, Mount was very capable of, being a very good playmaker in those wider right spaces. As for the interceptions, it will be set to aggressive. Pair that up with the fact that he will be set to a balanced approach for the supports on crosses, because, again, just like with Bruno, you want him in the box in certain moments, but other times on the edge of the area looking to rotate possession and maybe facilitate a bit more. So taking a look at Marcus Rashford's instructions going forward. So he is set to a basic defensive support. As a Man United fan, most fans, we know that Rashford doesn't always track back, but he does do it every now and then. So I've set him to basic. It allows him to more or less mimic this role, and I do think that in Tuchel's system, he will allow for Rashford to stay further up the field and be a very good counter-attacking option, which again is why I've set this to balanced. As for the chance creation, I have said this, looking to try and channel your attacking outlet more centrally, so you'd want both the likes of a Mason Mount as well as a Marcus Rashford to arc their runs or just drift inside a bit more, and essentially cut inside paired up with the getting behind approach will allow him to naturally arc his runs more centrally towards a secondary striker position. And of course, using his pace in behind to try and exploit the opposition's back line. As for the interceptions, I've left it on normal, and then of course you want him in the box waiting for the supply line of a Mason Mount or a Bruno Fernandes to try and get the ball into the likes of a Rashford or even a Rasmus Højlund, who will have very mixed instructions. He'll be told to stay central, looking to, be the focal point of the attack in those central areas. He can sometimes drift every now and then. If you are watching the gameplay, he does tend to drift quite nicely. But more so, he is the focal point higher up the field, looking to be a very good outlet ball for any attacks going forward. The attacking runs, however, is set to mix. He does have quite a bit of pace on him, and he can look to break in behind or use his physicality back into the opposition link-up play very nicely with a Bruno or a Mount or even a Marcus Rashford. And even then, he can also choose to drop a bit deeper and play as a false nine, interchange passes, and also allow for the likes of a Bruno Fernandes or maybe even a Scott McTominay to overlap him and almost take up that centre-forward role themselves. The interceptions will be set to aggressive. Of course, Rasmus Højlund is a pressing machine, and I think for Tuchel, he could more or less unlock him very, very well. And then finally, the defensive support is set to stay forward. We've seen countless times in the past, the likes of a Tuchel wants his star number 9 to try and stay high up the field, whether it's a Lukaku at Chelsea, Harry Kane at Bayern Munich currently, the likes of an Aubameyang at Borussia Dortmund, even the likes of an Edison Cavani at PSG. They were all told and instructed to stay higher up the field for the potential counter-attack. So guys, I have gone ahead and put down a few names on the shortlist that are linked with moves to Manchester United in real life that I also think could allow Thomas Tuchel to implement a successful, Tuchel system. So, starting off with the right back position. Of course, Aaron Wan-Bissaka doesn't really fit the bombing on attacking fullback role who can whip in crosses. Diego Dallo does, but at the same time, you can't just have one right back. So, Man United are linked with a move for Frimpong in real life, and I do think that he could be a very good attacking option. Think of Alphonso Davies currently in the Bayern Munich side. That could be the role and the mold for Frimpong to try and replicate. As for your two centre-backs, of course, I've put down Lukumi as well as Todibo. Again, both linked with moves to Old Trafford in real life and are both very good ball-playing centre-backs that also have quite a bit of recovery pace in them. So I think that they would suit a Thomas Tuchel side very, very nicely. As for your midfield, essentially to more or less replace McTominay, kind of have the replaceability factor, is Hjulmand. I think he has been scouted by United, but he is also linked with other moves to other various clubs. I think he would be perfect to sit alongside the likes of a Kobe Mainu and have a bit more of a balanced approach, not really always getting forward, but a nice mixed box-to-box midfield type role. The next person that we have is Olise, possibly to interchange with a Mason Mount on that right-hand side, or even on the left-hand side with the likes of a Marcus Rashford as well as a Alejandro Garnacho. So Olise could come in, is linked with the move to United. He is a United fan, which does give me hope that he would hold out for the big red club, but we'll have to see how things pan out. Although I do think that he could definitely be a very good creative wide midfielder. And then we've got two strike options here. I've gone with Jonathan David as well as Xerxes. They are both very similar to how the likes of Erasmus Højlund plays. Of course, Jonathan David is slightly undersized compared to Xerxes as well as Erasmus Højlund, but the pressing nature that he does possess could definitely work out in a Thomas Tuchel side. And of course, Xerxes, again, very similar to Rasmus Højlund, but he's a bit more of a creative forward, higher up the field, looking to drop a bit deeper into the pockets of space, playing as a false nine more so for the likes of a Bologna. But he could be a very good option for a Thomas Tuchel, system to work with. And there you have it, guys. That is how I would implement Thomas Tuchel's tactics into the current Manchester United side for FC24. If you have enjoyed this video, as always, please don't forget to smash that like button down below. Subscribe if you are new and you liked the content. Please, that would be fantastic. Hit the bell notifications. And of course, until the next time, until the next one, I hope you have a damn great day. And I'm out of here.